We are live, sir. You can begin.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Sachin Ambirwar, medical advisor from Janssen Dermatology team. On behalf of Janssen Dermatology, I welcome you all for this important scientific session on acne in current times. We all know world is going through unprecedented times today due to COVID-19 pandemic, and this pandemic has changed everything. It has impacted everyone. India is second worst affected country after USA. There are reports of exacerbations of various chronic skin disorders, and acne vulgaris is one amongst them. Has pandemic changed acne manifestations? How dermatologists are dealing with acne patients for its effective management? What role does teledermatology play in the management of acne vulgaris? To find out the answers of all these questions, we have panel of eminent dermatologists today with us. I would like to welcome our panelist, Dr. Michael Gold, who is joining from Nashville, USA, who would speak on international perspective about COVID impact on acne. Dr. Abir Saraswat, he joining us from Lucknow. He would speak on has COVID-19 changed the typical acne phenotype. Dr. Anurag Tiwari, he joining us from Bhopal. He would present on acne for caring for acne in COVID-19 era. Dr. Rajat Kandhari joining us from New Delhi. He would present on teledermatology and future of acne care, how to optimize patient counseling. Dr. Shehnaz Arsiwala joining us from Mumbai. She will speak on acne procedural management during COVID-19 pandemic. To moderate this session, we have one of the well-known dermatologists of India today with us, Dr. Neena Madnani. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to her for consenting to lead and moderate this important session, which will help dermatologists across India to manage acne patients effectively. Dr. Neena is a consultant dermatologist and has more than 37 years of experience. She is attached to PD Hinduja Hospitals and HN Reliance Hospital, Mumbai. She is a reviewer of IDVL, IJDVL, Dermatology Online Journal, International Journal of Trichology. She has contributed in textbooks like Clinical Images in IDVL Textbook of Dermatology, chapter in Textbook of Cosmetic Dermatology. She has special interest in acne, hair, vulval diseases, cosmetic dermatology. She has multiple publications and award to her credit, and notably, I would say she has been consecutively awarded by IDVL Maharashtra for best practicing dermatologist in 1999, 2002, and 2003. Now, I request Nina ma'am to take over this session. Before that, I would just tell all the participants at the end of sessions, participants will get DASIL certificate for participating in this event. Nina ma'am, over to you for further proceedings.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sachin, and thank you for inviting me to be the moderator here today. I welcome all the delegates to this very interesting program, Acne in the Current Times. And we have such a eminent panel of dermatologists from India and abroad. And I welcome our speakers and our distinguished panelists. So in December 2019, the COVID-19 expanded from Wuhan throughout China, and by February 2020, across the world. The first case in India was detected on the 30th January 2020, and in March 2020, India declared a lockdown to curtail the spread. This had a devastating effect on medical practice, and a lot of patients suffered. We know that acne is a chronic disease and has great psychological repercussions. An adequate and continuous treatment of the disease is required in order to reduce acne lesions, prevent permanent scarring, and limit the duration of this disorder. The need to support patients and monitor them as closely as possible has become even more important during the current quarantine period, as compliance may be reduced and the results suboptimal. Telemedicine has really come of age today. So we have for you a galaxy of experts who are here with us to share their experience, expertise, and therapeutic pearls in managing acne patients during the COVID pandemic. I'm sure you are going to pick up some pearls from today's sessions. And we welcome our first speaker, Dr. Michael Gold. Can I have his CV on the slide? Michael Gold is a very familiar figure in India. All of us who do aesthetic dermatology have heard him on innumerable conferences and innumerable sessions abroad and here. He's a clinical assistant professor at Vanderbilt University School of Medicine in the Department of Dermatology, as well as the Vanderbilt University School of Nursing. He's a visiting professor dermatology at Hoshan Hospital of Fudan University in Shanghai, China, as well as the #1 hospital of China Medical University in Shenyang, China. A member of various editorial boards, both nationally and internationally, and works as an associate editor with the majority of dermatology journals. He has written over 300 medical articles, over 30 textbook chapters, and has served as editor of 2 textbooks in dermatology. Dr. Gold has spent a great deal of his career lecturing on the national and international fronts, focusing on dermatology issues related to lasers and cosmetic dermatology surgery. Dr. Gold is an active member of leading dermatology and laser specialty societies and actively participates in meetings worldwide. And every word which comes out of Dr. Michael Gold's mouth is you have to listen very carefully because it's backed by so much research and expertise. Welcome, Dr. Michael.
Thanks, Nina.
We hand over the platform. You can take over.
Thank you so very much, and welcome everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see here how it works. This is a all right. So let's figure out where this talk is.
Dr. Michael, sir.
Yes, sir.
Click on share screen, sir. A pop-up window should appear in front of you.
A pop-up window has.
Yes. So either the pop-up window would be a text pop-up window.
Got it.
Yes, perfect, sir.
Got it. All right, let's see. So can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. You just have to put the PPT on the slideshow mode, sir.
Okay. All right, everybody. Welcome to this lecture, which I hope will be interesting. I'm going to share with you a bunch of hopefully interesting tidbits and interesting perspectives that I have as a dermatologist in the United States. Thank you for that very kind introduction. Yeah, and that's nice. And I'm going to actually end up talking about one product that I find fascinating during this whole pandemic as well. So that's my disclosures. And I will mention that I am helping host a virtual meeting. You know, we had Dazzle and Goa last year in November, and we were supposed to be in Mexico City this year. But we'll have a virtual meeting, and there's the information there. And I thank DocMode, and first I want to thank DocMode and Janssen for doing this. But DocMode has been very kind to partner with Dazzle, and we will be hosting this 3-day virtual meeting. It's going to be med derm and cosmetic derm. It is a worldwide faculty of amazing people. So there's your link, or there's the website you can get on if you want to learn more about the meeting. So I have given a talk on COVID many times, and so lots of it has been for the industry and lots of it's been for doctors. So I'll try to sort of do this one for the docs. So for all of us, this has been just the most unbelievable time we've ever faced. Ridiculous, unexpected, unfathomable. Nobody knows what's going on. You know, that's the problem. We were all doing incredibly well, no matter who you were pre-pandemic. if you were a dermatologist, you saw lots of patients. If you were a cosmetic dermatologist, you were as busy as you wanted to be. If you were in the industry, especially on the aesthetic side, you were extremely busy. And then it hit, and obviously the U.S., and I'm not going to get into politics, but we didn't do all of what we should have done. I will get into politics. We didn't do all what we should have done. And we have 8 million cases now and 215 or 18,000 deaths, with many more going on. We are in the middle of the second spike. In Tennessee, where I live, cases were about 1,000 a day, and now we're close to 3,000 a day. And so everything has changed. Everything is changing, and we're still not sure how much more change we're in for. So what I say about COVID-19 is we know more today than we knew yesterday. We know very little today, and we knew very little yesterday. What will happen and when? Will we ever be normal again? And when will it be all right again? I mean, those are the problems that we have, that we can plan and plot and try to make decisions, but everything we do as people and physicians and companies, everything is on, is day to day. As one of my favorite CEOs of a company here in the US said, she actually became a CEO in like October of 2019. And then this pandemic hit, and we had to do all of what we had to do as you did. She told me, and I use her quote a lot, she said, this was not in the CEO playbook. So all of us that run practices, all of us that run companies or whatever, none of us were prepared for this. So again, what COVID is. So I just want to tell you a little bit about the US experience and my experience, and then I'll bring you up to date on what I do. So about March 15th, the world here in the US sort of came to an end. And we were able to keep our offices open because we were quote unquote essential workers. I have 50 employees, and I kept them all working and everybody came to the office. We reduced our hours. We were only allowed to see emergency and essential visits. So in dermatology, that really meant emergency rashes and skin cancers, cosmetics, and elective procedures totally not allowed. So if you kind of get a sense that January, February, and the beginning of March, life was great. The middle of March to the end of March was a disaster. April was a disaster. May, we were actually allowed to reopen a little bit. Things got better. The interesting thing in my life is, I haven't traveled and I haven't been out of my office. So actually June was the best month I've ever had in practice, because I was working 4.5 days a week, every week. And then there was this thing we call pent-up demand, and the pent-up demand for the cosmetic patients was huge. People needed their injectables, and that seemed to drive everybody into the office. And for July and September, we have been on what we are a normal revenue on the med derm side. The cosmetic derm, the pent-up demand is done. Some people are choosing to hold off on the cosmetic side. And in October, again, med derm is doing incredible. I can't tell you how busy I am on the med derm side, but we are in the beginning or so forth of the second wave. So we have to see what's coming on. So again, we were allowed to do elective procedures on May 1st, but we had 6 weeks where we did nothing. So again, as you all have done, we've done with protocols for patients and staff, getting PPEs and making sure we had enough of everything and going through what we were supposed to do. And so again, where I live, we were allowed to do elective procedures. We opened on May 4th. Again, everything is done a certain way. And we actually kept our opening at 25% of our capacity. You can see here, everything is done, and so that nobody was allowed to come in with families. Nobody was allowed to come in groups. Patients were screened. The employees are screened. We have a COVID consent. And then, we were allowed to do, we started with our injectables and some energy-based devices. Our med spa wasn't allowed to do much of anything. Again, and then we began a systemic marketing program to encourage our patients that we were still alive. So this was a sign that the building that I'm in put up. Again, it's pretty old now, but it's still up because nobody's traveled to China, Iran, South Korea, Italy, or Japan. Nobody's traveled anywhere. But again, we have signs in our buildings, and then we have temperature checks. And we used to have boxes of 6 feet distancing. Now we have signs on the floor. We have signs everywhere about limiting everything. And so forth. And again, where they can sit. I have a reception area in my med derm that seats 50 people. We allow about 4 people total in there at any given time. And again, everything is done. And this is sort of where our staff is. Now it's totally plexiglass. And again, everybody works with plexiglass. Everybody works in masks and full PPE when we're doing procedures. We have face shields and we have goggles. And then we started to have some reopening signage and reopening social media. These are my providers that work with me. And again, we sort of said the doors are back open. We can't wait to see you. And again, our social media sort of let everybody know that we were alive, we were well, and we were ready to see people. This is sort of what our Instagram and our Facebook pages look like. And we did do a lot of telemedicine during all of this time. Telemedicine is great. It kept me busy. Unfortunately, on the cosmetic side, it's hard to do telemedicine except to do some consults. But on the acne side, and I'll show you an article I wrote in a minute, it's pretty easy to take care of acne patients with telemedicine. So again, we spend a lot of time doing telemedicine, and in the United States, they sort of waived a lot of the HIPAA rules and a lot of the compliance rules. And there are platforms that we are very secure with that allow us to do telemedicine. So a month later, we went into a phase 2. Basically, it was the same as phase 1, except we were allowed to see, we didn't have age restrictions. And then from till July 30th, we stayed in that phase 2. And then we tried to go to phase 3, and Tennessee and Nashville in particular was a disaster. The bars were crowded, nobody wore masks. And so we went to a modified stage 2, again, very high restrictions. And we are allowed basically to do anything we want now. And we have decided to limit our capacity still, because I don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable. And we preach safety and everything all over the time. So I am incredibly over optimistic, as you all know that know me, but I'm not so here, because I think that we need to be careful. If you look at the past 2 problems that we had here in the US particularly, and everywhere else, so 9/11 was a disaster for a lot of us as far as practices, but it was economic only. And then our practices recovered pretty quickly. In 2008, we had a recession here in the United States, but again, that was economic only. And the companies survived it, and within a year or so, they were back at full gun. COVID is totally unknown, and we have this whole medical part of this that we need to keep going. So I always say to everybody, what's the outlook, and what is our plan B if all of us on Zoom calls are not right? The Zoom call people at the beginning of COVID was, oh, don't worry, it'll be gone by the end of the year and everything's going to be, great. And then we started seeing disaster, after disaster as far as deaths and hospitalizations. And so, the forecast for companies, especially cosmetic, was grim. But again, what if we, what are we supposed to do during the reopening? And again, like I said before, we're in a bad spike now. What are we going to do? Are we going to all stay home again? Are we all going to do? And will our patients come back? So again, the pent-up demand to me is over. Injectables, energy-based. The question I always ask is, if you are a cosmetic patient in this environment, are you going to feed your families, pay your rent or mortgage, or are you going to get your Botox done? That's a really tough call. I mean, I know if I'm struggling, I'm feeding my family. So we've got to be careful we need to see all of our economies come back and the virus not. And that until we have a vaccine and a safe vaccine and people take the vaccine, that's going to be the thing. So we know the companies all had major problems, especially here in the US. There were layoffs, furloughs. Some of them are gone. Some have plenty of cash. So, we need to see what's going on. So we need to ensure our safety for our patients and staff. I've always said to the companies, they need to be creative, especially in the device side. They need extended terms, deals that make sense. And as long as the medical part of this is controlled, then eventually, when everything is said and done, the economy will come back, but it's going to be a fascinating thing. So one thing that has survived during all of this is medical dermatology. Acne, eczema, psoriasis, skin cancers do not know there is a global pandemic out there. So there's lots of new skin outbreaks as well. Some may be related to COVID or to unforeseen circumstances such as stress and mask wearing. It's really interesting. I got a phone call in April from my niece, who is a pediatric endocrinology fellow in New York City, and she had COVID, and her fiance at that time, now her husband, also had COVID. And she said, Michael, I need to send you a picture of my husband's toes, and he had COVID toes. And so I actually had that picture, and I sent it to about 20 colleagues of mine around in dermatology here in the US, and nobody had ever seen this or heard of it. I only wish I had published it, because obviously, as everybody knows, COVID toes is something we've all seen or heard about. And I think I saw one of the first cases of it from a case in New York, but I can't publish everything. So let's get into why you asked me to speak for the last few minutes on acne and maskne. If you haven't heard the term maskne, that's the whole big deal. And this is the article I was talking about. So there's a journal here called Practical Dermatology. And in May, they asked me to write an article about caring for acne and rosacea patients during the pandemic. So it was this article was written when our offices were really virtually closed. And so I focused a lot on teledermatology, and I think that's been important. So acne, as you know, I don't have to tell this group, you're all dermatologists, is really important. And again, I used to boo-hoo or poo-poo the disfigurement, pain, loss of confidence, and depression. And, I think after 30 years in dermatology, 30 plus years, this is a big deal. And this is something that we need to think about, because our colleagues in primary care and other specialties don't. And again, it's very high on the DLQI list and so forth. And again, acne doesn't care what age you are. And especially in this pandemic, you're going to be seeing more adults, especially with this acne with the mask thing. But it's an undertreated disease, and so that's really important. So maskne is acne appearing in the lower face. Be consistent and pertinent with your treatments to prevent this. Keep the skin clean, and I'm going to tell you how I do that and what I recommend to people. Again, the mask is a big deal. This is the area that COVID has a real impact on, and you're going to see people, and then that little diagram actually needs to extend into the neck area. I see a lot of people with acne now on the neck where their masks also occur. But this kind of thing where not very common just to see acne on the chin, but this is sort of a very common sight. Again, you can have big flares and so forth with it. So all of this, and this is probably more of a perioral dermatitis. But again, acne-related thing, what causes it, nobody knows. But again, friction, heat, moisture, clogged pores, just, occlusion probably, takes care of it. And we want to make sure that we cover everything and change your mask and avoid touching and use the right skincare and so forth. So that brings me to this product. And I'm going to, at the end, I'll show you what you can, where it comes to play in India. So we have a product here in the United States we call Lasersin. It is stabilized hypochlorous acid. This is my go-to for everything. It had been before COVID, but it is with COVID. And because hypochlorous acid, especially the product that I'm talking about, can be used for all of these dermatologic indications. And again, I think it's really important. And again, what it also is useful for is we use it for wound healing and for scar treatments. as well for our patients. So facial lesions are both inflammation and obviously C. acnes. There are lots of treatment options, and again, we all know what we do, but hypochlorous acid is proven effective, safe, and non-toxic and cost-effective. There's a lot of imitation in our country of hypochlorous acid. This product is the most stable. It's a natural molecule produced by our immune system to destroy pathogens. During that activation, a neutrophil and respiratory bursts generate hydrogen peroxide, and the activated granule enzyme myeloperoxidase converts hydrogen peroxide to hypochlorous acid. Hypochlorous acid is highly active against bacteria, viral, and fungal human pathogens and can kill spore-forming and non-spore bacteria in a very short period of time. And it works against biofilms, which have indications for other things. And topically applied, it is extremely safe and immediately broken down. And again, I spray my whole body with this all day long during practice. So here's what it does. It reduces microorganisms, biofilm, inflammation, itch and pain. So that's your eczema patients. It's really useful for wound things as well. So again, I'm not going to spend all day with this. I have dogs barking in the background, so I apologize. It's freezing cold here today, so my dogs don't want to be outside. So it's microcidal to bacteria, lots of bacteria, fungal, Candida, dermatophytes. Again, it works to make them go away. And this is a busy slide, but if you look to the right, you see all the organisms, and then you see the time to kill and the percent reduction. It kills everything, and it kills everything on contact. And again, here's your MBC concentrations at room temperature. Everything gets killed, and everything gets killed fast and much faster than anything else out there. So that's important. And if you look here, the magic bullet that we can't talk a lot about in the US, but I can talk internationally about it, you see human coronavirus. All right. And in Australia, this product has indications and approval to actually kill coronavirus, or at least treat and help the process go along. And we'll come back to that in a minute. So again, there have been lots of studies with hypochlorous acid for this is wounds and biofilms. It has anti-inflammatory, so it decreases histamine, leukotrienes, increases the activity of TGF-beta, decreases MMP7, collagenases, again, all this stuff, multiple active anti-inflammatory effects, as you see here. And there have been several publications that it reduces pruritus, which is really important in our itch and pain of our eczema patients. Again, 28% reduction in irritation as early as day 1. 50% report improvement in itching at day 1 and 85% at day 3. And again, you see the improvement here. This is a study by my friends Mark Nestor and Brian Berman in Miami, looking at pruritus, and again, the improvement in pruritus that they were able to show in this study. 74% of patients treated experienced a reduction within 72 hours. And again, improvement in eczema, so that was really important. It's very safe. Animal toxicity and safety studies, again, we use it in wounds and we use it in healing things. And again, in acne, which is, again, this talk, this is a study that, again, shows a group of patients, and you see the percent reduction in your inflammatory acne lesions, significant reduction just by using hypochlorous acid. And again, Mark Nestor and Brian Berman looked at a group of patients, 20 patients, and you see the percent reduction here. So amazing counts and amazing reduction in the acne lesions as a result of using hypochlorous acid. So that's really important. So this is what my last slide. You have a company called Genentix in India. They make these products, or they distribute these products under these brand names. I know, I apologize to the Janssen people, but this is what I do. And again, it comes in a spray, and I have big bottles and little bottles. I actually dispense this out of my office if people want this product. But for me and for my staff and myself, I actually spray this on my skin. I spray my masks, I spray my lab coats, all my things. It can get in your eyes, it can get in your mouth, and there's no effects. And this is my go-to thing for keeping myself safe, for keeping my staff safe. But for acne patients, for eczema patients, in this time of COVID, this product has become a mainstay of what I do. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen if I can figure out how to do it. And I'm going to turn the program back to you all.
Thank you, Dr. Gold, for such an excellent lecture and for sharing your perspective of how COVID is in the US and how it's affected the economics, clinical dermatology, and aesthetics. And of course, thank you very much for sharing with us this new molecule, hypochlorous acid. It seems to be like a magic bullet, something like isotretinoin for acne. So I think we're all going to look into it very carefully.
Yeah, I think you should.
Thank you very much.
I think you should. I mean, again, we say it's magic, and we keep going, well, it can't be magic. And every time we say it, it really does what it's supposed to do. So thank you all very much.
Thank you again, once again. And I also liked that one sentence that psoriasis, eczema, and acne don't know there's a pandemic going around. So I think a lot of us are going to use it in our talk. Excellent. Thank you so much. And we really enjoyed it. And thank you for sharing your time with us. So we go to the next speaker. So our next speaker is none other than Dr. Abir Saraswat. I've heard him on several occasions. He's such an astute dermatologist with so much interest in clinical dermatology. He has more than 20 years of experience and more than 60 publications with 45 in international journals. His areas of interest are psoriasis, pediatric dermatology, hair disorders, especially androgenetic alopecia, derm pact, and aesthetic surgery. He has won multiple awards and honors, especially Professor K.N. Saxena Memorial Oration of the UP branch of the IADVL for the year 2010 at the Cuticon 2010, Khajuraho. He's going to talk on has COVID-19 changed the typical acne phenotype. I'm sure you all are going to enjoy his lecture. Dr. Abir, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nina, and thanks to Janssen for inviting me and to Dasil for this symposium and this opportunity. My talk today is going to be on whether COVID has changed the typical acne phenotype. And this is a loaded kind of question, the answer to which obviously has not been given yet because we're so early into the pandemic, and case reports and case series of patients of acne and acne-like eruptions are still coming in thick and fast. Some of it is many people suspect in the publishing frenzy that has taken place to publish on COVID. Some of this stuff may not be as thoroughly reviewed and critiqued as we would like it to be. So at least personally, I am taking a lot of the literature being churned out by journals now with a little bit of pinch of salt, and I would advise you to as well. So this is going to be a bit speculative, some science, whatever we have, and a little bit of personal experience in the end. So the COVID pandemic, as Dr. Gold was saying, is a unique worldwide life-altering event. I don't think any one of us was alive when the last flu epidemic hit in the early part of the 20th century. So this is probably the first such experience of our lives. It has led to a sudden dramatic change in our lifestyle and behavior, some of it forced by law and highly unnatural, like staying at home for long periods of time, repeatedly scrubbing sensitive parts of our skin with various abrasive and potentially damaging things like soaps and alcohol-based rubs and other stuff. And some of it is voluntarily born out of fear and stress of being in such a hugely stressful, unnatural situation, cut off from social contact, fearful for our and our loved ones' health. And I don't need to overstate the case of COVID stress that our entire society is going through. And so all these changes coupled together have really affected globally in our health, also our skin health, and specifically coming to the topic for today, acne and acneiform eruptions. So if we look at skin in general, cutaneous signs that we have seen over the past 10 months or so in relation to COVID, Dr. Gore was talking about COVID toes, and I don't know whether it would be of interest to him, but it seems to be an extremely rare, almost unknown condition in COVID patients in India. Maybe it is because of the weather, we don't know, but this is a mysterious virus and things are evolving. So there are cutaneous signs directly attributed to the virus itself. There are the adverse effects of COVID treatment, which have caused unique skin problems of their own. And of course, the consequences of COVID protection related altered behavior. And all of it is forced. We are telling people to do this, we are doing this ourselves, and it is a profound change in the way we used to be just about a year back. So water, soap, alcohol-based rubs, various types of antiseptics, everything under the sun. In India, the situation is complicated by various Ayurvedic, homemade, and herbal, quote unquote, herbal products, which may or may not contain what they claim to contain. And of course, the second big part of it is the protective equipment that we are forced to wear to protect ourselves and our patients and our family members. All the masks, gloves, various kinds of impervious clothing, the various kinds of barriers that we put up between ourselves and our patients and other members, and the additional surfaces that we generate for microbes to thrive on, and how difficult it becomes to clean them. So all this combined has caused a lot of skin manifestations, both direct and indirect. And of course, a third big category, which sometimes gets sidelined a bit in this kind of discussion, are all the skin diseases aggravated due to the lack of access to healthcare. India was witness to one of the most draconian, one of the most severe lockdowns around the world, and most of the people could simply not get to any kind of healthcare at all for at least the first about 3 months of the epidemic. And that this has led to terrible devastation, terrible consequences for all kinds of dermatosis. People on immunosuppressives have had to stop because they just couldn't buy the medicine, they just couldn't talk to their doctor. Even if they could talk to the doctor online, there was no way of getting the medications or the investigations done which are required to continue those medications. And of course, the overarching factor of stress, fear, loneliness, uncertainty, that aggravates all these immune related conditions. And as we know now, acne is also intensely closely related to the immune system and the gut microbiome, and how our hormones respond to the various cues that the environment gives us. And all these things are affected by stress. So this is basically now from general effects on the skin. This slide shows you the direct effect of acne on skin. And as for the 4 different types of manifestations, skin manifestations, all 3 except a direct viral effect on the skin cause acne or can affect acne. And God only knows, maybe tomorrow we'll find some new, maybe direct manifestation of some kind of an acneiform eruption due to COVID as well. So far it's not so. But as far as the treatment of COVID is concerned, we know that the only drug that today we know is effective against moderate to severe COVID infection is corticosteroid. We all know what that does to acne. Fortunately, the courses that are being given are usually 7 to 14 days. So it should not produce much of a problem, except for some patients who are intensely steroid sensitive and whose acne flares up. And of course, the second biggest category is protection related. Professor Gold referred to this. Maskne is trending all across the social media. Everywhere people are writing about it, thinking about it. Companies are making money off it, selling various kinds of masks, various kinds of products which are supposed to prevent it or treat it. And of course, excessive face cleansing out of anxiety as well as out of fear of COVID, getting COVID, and of course, out of the attempt to get rid of the acne that is caused. And of course, like I said, cessation of treatment. So closure of various dermatology practices, departments, lockdowns, fear of systemic retinoids. I will come to this in a subsequent slide. Many patients have called me. I'm sure they've called other doctors as well, asking about whether this drug causes any problems. They notice a dryness of their lips and nose and naturally wonder, is it causing some kind of damage to my nose and mouth? Could I pick up the virus more easily? And of course, overall stress again comes into the picture, which aggravates acne. So this issue of maskne, of course, it is an intriguing condition. It is not entirely unexpected. We know that frictional acne, we know all kinds of various types of friction-related and humidity-related acne aggravations are well known. Majorca acne is described in some of our oldest textbooks. Patients who used to go in summer vacation, but that was related to sunlight, may have been due to humidity as well. So many cases of acne exacerbation or onset are reported in healthcare personnel as well as in common people after they start regular mask wearing. What exactly is the cause is still not known. The typical manifestations are nose, lips, and cheeks, which are primarily affected, disproportionately more than the forehead and the periphery of acne. Now, this young lady whose photograph I'm showing you to the right also has the forehead affected, but this was the only area affected before March or so. And she came to me a few months back and she said, I've never really had acne on my cheeks, but now I'm getting acne on my cheeks as well. And she, of course, on her lips also, you can see that there are a few papules which are not really commonly seen in acne otherwise. So this was maskne. One more thing, you might notice a slight amount of unnatural erythema and this kind of on her left cheek. Now, this I must tell you is not acne at all. This is tinea incognito, tinea faciae. So as you all know, we are in the middle of a terrible dermatophyte epidemic as well. And this lady was suffering from both acne as well as tinea. And when I asked her, she did confess to having tinea in other parts of her body as well. So this is also something that we must remember. Occlusion not only aggravates acne because of humidity, moisture, temperature, whatever, it also acts as a breeding ground of other dermatoses as well. The severity in the only study that has been published on a small group of patients of maskne from China showed that the severity of this kind of mask-related aggravation of acne does not correlate with the duration of mask wearing. The very probably only 1 or 2 hours of wearing a mask every day is enough to cause an aggravation, at least in their patients. Now coming to isotretinoin and the controversy about isotretinoin. Like I said, fears have been expressed both in the lay public as well as in the scientific community that isotretinoin-induced xerosis may affect the integrity of the nasopharyngeal mucosa, making it more prone to catch or shed the virus. Sounds logical. But there is no firm evidence to support the assertion. Most acne experts think that low doses are probably safe in this regard, and nasal lubrication should take care of the xerosis. But the scientific studies show that isotretinoin is the strongest downregulator of ACE2 inhibitors in cell lines in the petri dish. And this ACE2 receptors, as you know, are the main receptors through which the virus gains access into the nasal and even conjunctival mucosa. So theoretically, it should inhibit viral adhesion. So these are two contradictory things which we don't know. I just thought I'll bring it forth that we can probably have a discussion on it. But we all know that theory may not translate to real life, and we need not look further than hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, etc., which look like super drugs in the petri dish. They kill the virus, they don't let the virus enter the cells, but they do absolutely nothing at all in human beings. So be that as it may, the evidence on isotretinoin is contradictory. From the lab, it seems to be beneficial. Theoretically, from the nasal dryness, people fear that it could harm. But my personal gut feeling is that the low doses, about 20-30 milligrams that we use, probably should not cause much of a problem. At least I haven't seen a problem in my patients on isotretinoin. What are the factors that promote mask acne? Again, this is more of conjecture. We know from age-old studies that acne mechanica and folliculitis mechanica, so any kind of occlusion and friction, these two factors, once they come together, they cause acne, both comedonal as well as inflammatory. And it is probably caused by follicular osteal damage, by friction, heat, moisture, etc. Like I said, both kinds of lesions are seen. And also humidity and occlusion, they cause epidermal edema, causing follicular occlusion and creating wonderful conditions for microbial overgrowth. And sebum excretion rate goes up with humidity. It is said that almost with every 1 degree Celsius increase in ambient temperature, sebum excretion rate goes up by about 5 to 10%. And of course, there is a direct inflammatory effect of humidity and temperature on the skin as well. Epidermal barrier also, we know, is already compromised in acne prone areas, and when these are thoroughly cleansed or repeatedly cleansed with however non-damaging things that you may use, it will lead to further compromise of the epidermal barrier, and the constant friction caused by mask materials also will probably aggravate this. And of course, finally, we all know that excessive or repeated cleansing with soap, water, or alcohol-based cleansers will also exacerbate this barrier dysfunction, leading to acne aggravation. Now, an interesting case report was published, so I thought I'll just talk about it in one slide. So a cell phone acne has been reported from India. Interesting observation from one of our departments. They reported a series of patients who had acne exacerbated only on one side of the face, which correlated with the hand that they held their cell phone in, and they were all used to prolonged cell phone use. And cell phone use has really exploded in this social isolation times that we live in. So they postulated that friction, humidity, also maybe the short wavelength blue light that is released from cell phones. There are already a couple of studies from China that have shown that blue light emitted from LEDs and LCD screens can increase the proliferation of Propionibacterium acnes and can cause inflammation in the acne. So this may be an additional factor. And of course, bacterial contamination of the cell phone itself is also a possibility, which may be aggravating the acne and causing a kind of folliculitis on top. And of course, the final overarching factor is stress. I've deliberately taken a very simple cartoon to just explain this. So hormones and inflammation, and of course, various environmental factors, all three come together to cause acne. And all of these have stress as a factor. So stress causes various perturbations in adrenal hormones, pituitary hormones, sex hormones, thyroid hormones, all of which have an effect on sebum alterations and the functioning of the sebaceous gland, and they can cause sebum oxidation and acne. And of course, direct inflammation because of gut permeability, various kinds of antioxidants being depleted, they also can cause acne. And of course, stress itself, like I said, like temperature, stress also increases sebum production and can aggravate acne. So finally, before I end, my personal experience with acne patients in COVID times, I have not seen an obvious increase in absolute numbers, but of course, there's the huge elephant in the room is whether my patients are able to reach me at all. Of course, for the past about a month or so in Uttar Pradesh, access has been pretty free, and I'm seeing almost the same number of patients that I used to see in December, January, February. But for almost 6 to 7 months, it was quite low and it was gradually going up. So this may be a confounding factor, I don't know. But personally, what I'm seeing is more exacerbations, very few de novo cases that I can blame on COVID or COVID-related factors, maybe direct or indirect. Like I said, cheeks, lips, and nose seem to be more affected in those patients who are noticing that they started getting more or worse or slightly different acne ever since the COVID pandemic hit. Mainly, I see papules, pustules, and nodules. I'm not seeing much comedones in relation to this kind of aggravations, but I have noticed significant itch in quite a few patients, and this itch may be related to underlying atopy, may be related to the humidity or the actual friction of the cloth of the mask causing the itching. Any of these factors may be there. So in my experience, the phenotype has changed slightly, skewed more towards the inflammatory type of acne, central face being more affected than the peripheral face. That's about it. Before I end, I'll just a couple of slides about tackling acne in COVID times. I think there is another talk on this. So just not going too much into detail, general advice, the most important thing is to tell our patients not to scrub and rub again, and not to use the alcohol-based cleansers that they use on their hands, on the face, to use mild products. People who wear masks should cleanse immediately before and after mask use. Proper washing of cloth masks is essential. There are high fashion masks that many of my patients wear, which are made of polyester or silk, or they have embroidery on them, which may be rough, and they may also be not very skin friendly as far as the fabric itself is concerned. Some masks are very tight, some are ill-fitting so that they keep rubbing against the face. So both situations are inimical to skin hygiene. And of course, like I said, synthetic or abrasive materials abound. As time is passing, people are getting sick of boring old 3M masks or the traditional cloth masks, and they're buying different kinds of stuff which we don't know what it contains, what kind of material it's made of. And of course, once we talk about tackling this acne, in addition to acne therapy, we have to consider giving our patients relief from the stress, giving our patients relief from the itch that this kind of acne causes in a lot of them, and of course, try to minimize the irritation caused by our treatments by using various types of tricks of the trade that we know: short contact retinoids, diagnosing and treating when they're having a flare up, whether it is gram-negative folliculitis or furunculosis caused by a bacteria, not just acne. Judicious use of antibiotics, low dose isotretinoin, like I said, is probably fine. Hormonal treatment, of course, is at our disposal, and we can use it in our patients as needed. Thank you very much for your time, and I hand over back to Dr. Nina.
Thank you, Dr. Abir, for such a comprehensive talk. And also, one important point which you brought up is that under the mask, the sweating, make sure that we don't forget about a dermatophyte coming up and, the incognito. I think that's a very, very important point, because we are so focused on acne that these other entities can just miss us. And we'll come to the topics you shared in the discussion. But again, it was a really comprehensive lecture. Thank you very much. We move to the next speaker. So our next speaker is Dr. Anurag Tiwari, a good friend of mine, and who I've known for many, many years, an excellent dermatologist and an excellent orator. He has had more than 15 years of professional experience in the field of dermatology. His areas of interest are clinical dermatology, lasers, and dermatosurgery. He has over 100 oral presentations in various conferences, contributed chapters in dermatology books, and multiple publications to his credit. He's a dermatologist who combines clinical dermatology, excellence with fun. So he has the best of both worlds. I welcome you, Dr. Anurag Tiwari. The stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, Nina, for the introduction. And of course, we've been friends for more than 1.5 decades. So yes, and thank you very much, Janssen. Thank you very much, everybody, for having me here. Let me just share the screen with you.
Your screen is shared, sir. You just
It's
have to
already
open the
shared.
PPT.
Yeah, it's just a second. It was open. Shit. This is something which happens. I'm sorry. Just a second. Is it visible?
Yes, sir. You can just move on to the first slide.
All right. Thank you. So,
Thank you, sir.
well, caring for acne in COVID era, we've got fantastic talks from Abir, Michael Gold, and everybody. Abir, a big thank you. I did a lot of editing in my talk while I was listening to you. I could actually delete a lot of my slides. I could not delete some of my slides. So, because you covered everything so comprehensively. So, my apologies to the viewers that we might have a little bit of a repeat of what Abir said already to us. So anyway, we know that caring for acne in COVID-19, which of course has been unparalleled, we've all heard about it. It's had great amount of impact on how we approach as dermatologists to all these conditions which are happening. And of course, there have been a lot of exacerbation of pre-existing skin diseases. Acne vulgaris is one of them. I would just like to show. So this is the Indian perspective. About the global perspective, Dr. Michael Gold has already talked about. We are getting those, we had the spike. Now it's slightly going down, things are slightly getting better. And as Abir said, the patients have started coming in, the borders have opened up, the buses have started flying, the trains have started working. So we're getting a lot of patients from the periphery. So that is why a lot of patients who were hidden behind actually having this problem have started coming to us. Now, coming to this particular slide, in which it's an interesting slide. It's a busy slide, but an interesting slide. We can see that before and after COVID, there have been a lot of the biggest spike, as expected, was cirrhosis of the hands. Then came the hand eczemas. Then came the face cirrhosis and eczemas, body cirrhosis and eczema. So this is a very nice comparison between the before and after COVID scenario. And look at it. The acne and folliculitis on the face also stand at number with a 525 people reporting such lesions. And this goes on with hair loss. It actually correlates with what is being seen in my OPD. So that's why I really like this particular slide, that the hair loss has gone up, the acne have gone up, the body cirrhosis, of course, we all know that all these things have gone up. So this is what we are getting. We are getting aggravations. What would have caused the skin flares? Abir mentioned beautifully about stress. Well, self-isolation led to stress. Mask acne, of course. Diet, I think, also played an important role in exacerbation of acne, although we are not very sure about how diet actually causes acne in all the cases. But overall, we have had a lot of reports about diet aggravating acne. I'll come to this in the next slide. Uh, Self-treatment was one of the very important things. Dr. Google was there to help our patients. And of course, there were tutorials at the YouTube, which led the patients to realize that it's very easy to treat conditions at home. Everything is DIY. So they started doing those things. Coupled with, of course, we were not available. The medicines were not available. Telemedicine had just started taking its root. We were all not comfortable with using telemedicine at that particular point of time. So self-treatment started happening. People started applying everything right from, self-treatment, of course, also meant those particular small little creams which every home in almost every home in India has, those betamethasone creams, those triple combination creams which we use for any kind of an itch, any kind of thing on the skin, and bang, it comes out and it's applied. So of course, the face was no exception. We developed a lot of steroid acne. We started getting steroid acne because of this, possibly. Hygiene, of course, played a small role. We had actually, it should not be hygiene. It was over hygienic way of life, which people started having of, like Abir mentioned, about cleansing of face repeatedly, etc., and which all possibly led to aggravation of acne. This particular chart is a very, very common chart which is being used. Western diet, of course, did not play a role so much in India. But with the lockdown happening, I guess in most of the cities, most of the metros, most of the smaller cities, people started hoarding things. And what they went to was possibly to things which could be stored easily. That could mean eating a lot of noodles. It could mean eating a lot of ready-to-eat cereals. It could mean that they had those the sausages. They had all those frozen stuff which is there in the supermarket. That was one of the first things which went off. So these were possibly eaten more often by men, women, children alike, and could that be also a reason for aggravation of acne during these times of COVID? I wonder, and I'm not sure. But these are just various thought processes which were happening in the mind while reading about all these things. Mass acne, everybody has talked about it, so I'm not going to this busy slide. Well, this was actually related to one particular thing which I want to talk about is, Abhi mentioned about the perioral dermatitis, seborrheic dermatitis, pityrosporum follitis, acne rosacea. Well, the interesting part here is there are certain biofunctional textiles, and forgive me, my canine stays with me and he's very uncomfortable when I speak such a lot. So biofunctional textiles have some ultraviolet protection. They have some antioxidant properties and anti-aging benefits, which may actually lead as an incentive for mask wearing. Also, silver, zinc oxide, copper oxide, nanoparticles, if incorporated into textiles, also have some kind of a biospectrum, biocidal properties. So, and that could actually have a therapeutic benefit for dermatological conditions, apart from reducing the antibiotic resistance in acne treatments. So, these are all new areas in which dermatology and all other medicine science is going in. So I love this because it is trying to use an opportunity of treating various conditions by using masks as well. So why not? People would be more comfortable in using masks if they know that it could help them in other ways as well. This was what Michael Gold talked about. This was published in a few articles that this is the ozone, which has been said to be more affected during the mask acne. And of course, there was this particular slide again about no relationship between mask acne wearing time and acne formation. So these are once again the cell phone epidemic thing was happening. Well, if I were to question a few things and questions came to mind, what is happening after COVID and what kind of acne is happening, so that would decide on what treatment we are going to give them. Of late, there's been no major difference in the gender bias towards acne causing. It was similar. It is the same right now. So the gender bias, I would say, I don't find any increase. But of course, there is a slight increase in adult acne coming to me now. It could be because of the mask acne. It could be because of more stress in them. And of course, the hormones taking their own sweet will because of the stress, because of not exercising or taking those supplements, etc., while being in the COVID times. So severity of acne case, not really. I don't think so that we are getting more severe acne cases. Possibly those few areas where the severe acne cases are coming in are because of lack of proper treatment while all of us were in hiding. So that would be possibly the cause of the thing. So what do we do while the acne happens in this particular pandemic? Well, initially we had a lot of inhibitions. We had a lot of thought processes happening that whether to do this, whether to do that. We all, dermatologists, we all know retinoids, alpha, beta hydroxy acids, antibiotics, nicotinamide, benzoyl peroxide, fixed dose combinations, etc. Well, for me, the entire basket of medications is a fantastic thing to have. And of course, during those initial days of COVID, there was there were a lot of irritations happening. We were slightly afraid of treating these patients, but I go ahead and use all the molecules which are there to my disposal in the way I want. I love, I love tretinoin actually, as compared to adapalene, tazarotene. I have I don't know, I have a very good love affair with tretinoin since more than 2 decades now. And it's a go back molecule for me. It's a fallback molecule. I love the molecule, except during the winters. I use this molecule left, right, and center, alone or in combination with other molecular agents like benzoyl or nicotinamide, or combines with clindamycin, etc. So antibiotics, of course, are a part of my treatment. I do not make any changes for topical or oral therapy. It all depends on what kind of acne, what I'm getting. It all depends on the age group of the patient. It depends on what the patient requires at that particular point of time. That would depend on the morphology of the acne, whether it is more nodulocystic acne or comedonal acne. So if it's more of a nodulocystic acne, I would of course prefer going towards oral antibiotic along with undercover of an isotretinoin. And isotretinoin, of course, is a molecule which, once again, I am very, very partial to, and I love to use that molecule. Topical therapy, of course, are reserved for very initial cases of acne, those comedonal acne alone, and in children whom I don't need to start them on oral therapy for any reason. I don't like to investigate a lot of my patients. Contrary, now this is going to stir up probably a Pandora's box here. Whenever I suspect a case of hyperandrogenism, be it hirsutism, be it accessoria, be it hair loss, or any other thing, irregularity of menstrual cycle, I get my endocrinologist into the picture very fast. I don't like to investigate my patients for endocrinological workup, and neither do I like to prescribe hormonal therapy to my patients. I do it along with my endocrinologist, who's a great friend of mine and who sees eye to eye and who knows what to be done and how to be done without taking it away from a dermatologist that this should not be done alone. Well, we have got our OPD hours reduced, patient visits are less, and follow-up visits have also been reduced. So that's why my prescriptions are for a slightly longer duration nowadays, because the patients don't want to come back to the clinic very often. They don't want to expose themselves to the clinics. They all have their strong belief that going to a clinic or hospital will lead them to more susceptible to an infection, as compared to, I always tell my patients, coming to a clinic of a doctor who's taking adequate precautions is probably more safer than you're going out for dinner, or you're going to a mall, or in the near future going to watch a movie. But then, well, patients feel that a patient-to-patient contact would be much more harmful. So that's why the prescriptions are longer. Well, easy to use, safer options should be preferred for the treatment of these patients. Like I said, I love my tretinoins, robust, efficacious. Of course, it comes with a problem of certain dryness of the skin. It comes with the problem of perioral dermatitis happening. All these things, of course, we know that these things can happen. We know how to tackle them. We know how to counsel the patients. What is more important here is when I'm treating these particular patients, whether it's a COVID era or a non-COVID era, the important part is counseling. And the counseling is how to apply your medications. So we do spend at least 5 minutes of our time per prescription and explain the patient how to apply that particular medicine and how to be gentle with the medicine and how to go about getting the best effects with the least amount of side effects. Tretinoin, of course, we know it's got a fantastic faster mode of action, comedolite effects, and microsphere have good safety profile. Oral isotretinoin, Abir has already told about it. Well, there was a paper which said low-dose isotretinoin with folic acid supplementation because of the olfactory function is good. Well, once again, to add on to what he has already said, Abir has already said about the ACE receptors, I'll add something else here, Abir, and for the benefit of all the viewers here, that isotretinoin has been known to be a potential inhibitor of papin-like protease. Now, we are hearing a lot about enzymes. We are learning a lot of enzymes. We're learning a lot about inflammatory mediators, courtesy COVID. Well, this one is here from me. I learned this one latest. Papin-like protease, which is a protein encoded by the COVID, modulates the host cell machinery to the advantage of virus. So it is considered to be one of the important proteins which should be targeted for COVID-19 treatment. So we as dermatologists possibly are contributing to the treatment of COVID by giving them isotretinoin. Of course, this is at the lighter note. Like Abir said, that these are all theoretical papers which have been flooding the market, and we need to take them with a pinch of salt. The doses of isotretinoin which we use potentially are low dose, and I don't think so that they would be, till now we've not faced any problem with that particular thing, and no journal has also reported any kind of a side effects. Antibiotics, of course, similar, the same old story about not being used as a monotherapy should be discouraged. You should always combine it with something topically or oral. A combination works the best. Never use a antibiotic as a monotherapy, whether a topical or an oral. I love this molecule again. Tretinoin with clindamycin gives me fantastic results. Patients are comfortable, and it takes care of possibly not having an antibiotic resistance. Well, to answer this particular question, has my line treatment Has my line of treatment changed? No, it's a big no. My line of treatment sticks on to the conventional treatment. There goes, well, of course, there goes in a lot of time about counseling these patients about getting those dry skins, getting those possible side effects, the mucosal dryness, etc., and not to confuse it with a COVID. Or sometimes even some patients get a dry throat and they cough a little bit, so they get a little worried. Of course, if somebody coughs, you get worried. Even if I get a small little sore throat in the morning when I get up, the day goes off very bad. You always think about the worst which is happening. So, well, it's not something which you should be afraid of. Moisturizers, little bit of moisturizers before or after using masks. Sabir has already mentioned about it. Topical antibiotics, combination with benzoyl peroxide for mild papules and pustules. Retinoids for so-called blackheads and whiteheads. Severe cases, always be treated under the guidance of dermatologist. Always be given time. Always be treated for a good measure of time till complete treatment happens and for a full dose of whatever medicine you're using. I thank you here for your kind listening, and I hope I have given you some insight into how to treat acne. Should stop sharing my screen here now and hand over the mic to Nina. Over to you, Nina.
Thank you, Dr. Anurag, for such an interesting lecture. And what really struck me is your two things. One was that lovely graph which you showed of various skin diseases before and after. And what surprised me was that hair loss was so low down. The type of hair loss we are seeing, I thought it would overcome the cirrhosis also. And also telling us, I mean, a very important point you brought up is self-treatment. A lot of our patients did do self-treatment. Some people burned themselves with homemade chemical peels. And of course, we saw a lot of steroid side effects. So thank you very much. We move to the next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Rajat Kandhari. He is a very good speaker, and the topic given to him, initially, he was a little apprehensive, but he's done such a great job. Congrats, Dr. Rajat, before even the speakers listened to it. It was a difficult topic, but I think you've handled it well. So the areas of interest are general dermatology and aesthetic dermatology. He has multiple publications in national and international journals to his credit. He's a presenter in national and international conferences and moderator in many national conferences. He has conducted various conferences successfully. Notably, he was the organizing secretary of the IDVL SIG Laser Conference of 2016. His topic is teledermatology and future of acne care, how to optimize patient counseling. Over to you, Dr. Rajat.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And thank you for helping me out during the making of this whole presentation. And thank you, Jansen, for having me. And thank you, Dr. Anurag, sir, for letting us dermatologists know that we are in fact contributing to the treatment of COVID. I'm just going to share my screen now. So I'm going to be talking about will the use of teledermatology. Are my slides visible?
Sir, your slide is visible. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Will the use of teledermatology impact the future of acne care and the importance of patient counseling in today's time? So first and foremost, why is it important to address and counsel the acne patient? And I think the past few speakers have said this, and so would I lay stress upon it, that acne demonstrates high levels of social, psychological, and emotional impairments and may exhibit suicidal ideation. And there is a lot of data, controversial data regarding this though. Treatment helps almost all patients with acne, and if started promptly can prevent scarring. And up to 50% of our acne patients, in fact, do not adhere to long-term treatment. And with the impact of this global pandemic, I call it the vicious triad. The global pandemic got with it a fair amount of psychological distress, particularly the quarantine period for many people. And there is increasing evidence which links psychological stress in acne pathogenesis, as Dr. Abir sir showed in his slides. And this emotional stress is associated with the production of certain hormones, neuropeptides, cytokines, and this influence the course and exacerbation of acne by altering the activity of the pilosebaceous unit. So all this sort of becomes a vicious triad which we are dealing with. And it stresses upon the fact that our acne patients, in fact, need care in this time more than not. And which brings us to teledermatology. And this is Dr. Hugo Gernsback in 1924. He was one of the guys to have started teledermatology back then. And this is many of us in 2020. And the teledermatology train is coming. I have put this in brackets, that has come. So get on board, get out of the way, or get run over. So it's something we sort of have to adapt to and change with the changing times. Teledermatology imparts dermatology care from a distance by using electronics, communications, and technology to transmit the information between the patient and the dermatologist, and vice versa. And since the COVID outbreak, there have been measures including reduction of our face-to-face visits and the implementation of teledermatology to cater to our patients' needs. A teledermatology practice may involve various forms. It may be a regular teledermatology between a general practitioner and a dermatologist, between dermatologists and other specialty cares, and the one in the red box, which is what we are essentially dealing with nowadays, which is patient-assisted teledermatology practice, which involves a direct and active participation of the patient with the dermatologist via video consult or video conferencing, or a store and forward mode wherein the patient may send you pictures, or a hybrid, that means a mix and match of both. And I think we all know this is how it works. The patient you diagnose by a spot exam, this is sent to the dermatologist, and you send your prescription back to the patient. And in case these are chronic cases or something which may require initial face-to-face exam, you do an initial exam, maybe conduct a biopsy, confirm the diagnosis, and maybe suggest that later on treatment may continue via this mode. So coming to acne, is it common for patients to seek online consultations for acne? And I think we all pretty much know the answer for this, considering how common acne is per se in our practices. And the continuation of care of chronic dermatological patients, particularly acne, is to a large extent possible by means of teledermatology. And this has many reasons, and I'll be coming to those. And data has shown that the two most common diagnoses seen in teledermatology, other than a lesion of concern, were acne and dermatitis. And I think, as some of the speakers have said, that hair fall is a major one which I see in my practice nowadays. The majority of patients appreciate the visits and the attention that physicians give to them via teledermatology, as well as the treatment received by them. And they feel that they want to consult and continue the consult with the same dermatologist. And this is, in fact, encouraging in such times. So while acne appears to be a common issue for which patients seek these consults and are usually satisfied with their initial consult, does it come without any limitations? And I think what you see on the left is potential teledermatology practice pitfalls. And I've tried to translate them into what I call maybe the acne model, somewhat similar to this. So inability to properly diagnose is number one. And I don't think this is a very major limitation when it comes to acne, as the clinical diagnosis is fairly simple. We all are very used to it. What hampers it at times is poor quality photographs, which limit ascertaining the grade and the sequelae, and certain acne mimickers. Inability to complete the circle of care. What this might mean is lack of proper counseling, use of home remedies and do-it-yourself solutions, lack of adherence and follow-up, inability to carry out certain testings, certain procedures for acne sequelae. And finally, there is no definite legislation that singularly deals with the practice of telemedicine in India. There are certain guidelines. There is resistance at times by patients for follow-up fees. You keep getting repeated WhatsApp messages just seeking a further consult than what you have already given. And of course, it's at times tough to reply to each and every one of those concerns. Reimbursement is an issue as well. So this was a patient treated in telemedicine via video conferencing by a few dermatologists as a acne patient, and not responding to conventional treatment at all. And she was quite frustrated. And she sent me this picture, and by probing, I was wondering, why is she not responding after all? And by probing, she told me, my sister has these sort of lesions. And then eventually I sort of called them in, and this turned out to be RPC. Then there are general practitioners, wherein obviously they have treated such patients which might cause issue to a general practitioner. For a dermatologist, fairly easy to diagnose. And there may be certain other mimickers in the form of sebaceous hyperplasia or LMDF, which might complicate a simple condition like acne when you're seeing it as a teledermatology consult. The diagnostic accuracy of clinical dermatology is better than teledermatology. And I don't think it takes a scientist to say that. Teledermatology had acceptable diagnostic accuracy and concordance compared with clinical dermatology, particularly for conditions like acne, because they are relatively simpler to diagnose, and a little information exists on the impact of teledermatology on the clinical outcomes and the management. So we've diagnosed it, but what about what we achieve at the end? So these are reasonable to good quality photographs. So you see the complete face, the neck, visible, grade of acne is pretty visible, and extent is appreciable. Close-up shots have also been sent for detailing of the lesions. So this makes it simple for you to assess and diagnose and further treat. This is a moderate quality photograph. You can see the grade of acne fairly appreciable, part of the face visible, extent of the disease not very clear. This is a fairly poor quality photograph. I had to ask the patient to send me another photograph, and he sent with the pointers, but I still can't really see the grade of acne very well. Patient also had acne on the back. No photograph was sent. Poor quality photographs, out of focus, lesions unclear, extent of the disease pretty unclear. So these are certain things which I think all of us have faced and are facing in our teledermatology practices. And I think with our usual counseling, with our teledermatology, these sort of this information probably needs to go, and we need to maybe have a template for this, telling the patients that kindly send us proper photographs. So what happens to the acne patients during the follow-up? Do they adhere to the treatment, or do they really improve via teledermatology? Well, comparing acne follow-up, teledermatology versus outpatient visits, teledermatology patients were less likely to follow up in the first 90 days compared to patients seen face-to-face. And this was quite surprising for me. Teledermatology patients were more likely to be treated with oral antibiotics or oral spironolactone. I don't know how many of us are following this in our practice, compared to patients seen face-to-face. The above findings would translate, if we are giving antibiotics, if we are giving oral spironolactone, this would translate into more counseling, I personally feel, and information to the patient regarding what they might have to deal with, considering the topical treatment and the oral treatment together. Delivering follow-up care to patients via an e-visit platform produced clinical outcomes equivalent to those of conventional office visits. As Dr. Abir sir said, these things need to be maybe taken with a pinch of salt. However, this data comes way back from 2009, 2010. Dermatologists typically take the total inflammatory lesion count to be a reliable marker when measuring the track or progress of a patient via the e-platform. And good clinical outcomes after management, after video conferencing, can definitely be there if treated and if you've got the good quality photographs as well. Certain times when teledermatology won't do the job. And I think Dr. Shehnaz ma'am would be speaking a bit about this aspect. And these are macrocomedones with cystic acne. Maybe we need to extract these, inject the cysts on the nodules, acne scarring, of course, and difficult to treat hypertrophic scarring with acne. So all this together, along with the e-platforms, leads to more counseling than what the acne patient already required, and in order to adhere to the treatment. And poor compliance because of improper advice and lack of listening is one of the top reasons why acne treatment might fail. So effective counseling is as important as your choice of therapy. So even on the e-platform, we need to spend equivalent time, and it's challenging at times, with the patient to explain to them that adherence is great, how to adhere to the treatment, how to apply, so on and so forth. Adherence is greatest with regimens that are simple, effective, tolerable, and easily incorporated into the patient's daily routine. And this could definitely matter when it's male versus female, particularly, and with millennials, with adults working. Patients must understand why they are taking the medication and how to use and apply it, and identify and address their misconceptions patients may have about the disease and the outcomes. The first consult should lead to good communication, and that leads to better adherence. And this is more of some of the screenshots which I've put, which further stamps on the fact how important counseling is. So this was a photograph sent to me that my wife's got an acne outbreak. And obviously, as a dermatologist, we know that this is a herpes simplex. Patient has been started on isotretinoin, and isn't that a steroid? After explanation, my acne has gone up because of boiled egg intake due to the gym, and shaving of my face. Of course, this could lead to acne. But my point being that counseling is important. So counseling may have two aspects, general aspect and treatment aspects. In your general aspect, dispel the myths that give credence to the idea that acne is a result of dietary choices, hygiene habits, use of cosmetics, or sexual activity. Of course, many of these things do have a role, but we need to dispel the myths and tell them the truth. Discuss the pathogenesis in a simple manner. Brief discussion of the differences between what OTC will do and what a prescription medication will do. And very important nowadays, as already mentioned, DIY. Talk about it because you can't run away from it. Home remedies, masks, alcohol, sanitizers on the face, as also mentioned previously. And in fact, DIY is so important, like I said, we can't run away from it, that this is the American Academy of Dermatology, and they've got a whole page now dedicated to just DIY and what to do about it. Maybe send patients stuff like this. Do not pop, squeeze, or pick at acne. Apply toothpaste to pimples, so on and so forth. And this is a patient after toothpaste application. Tips for treating from retin aids. Some simple thing like this could be sent as a WhatsApp to a teledermatology patient. Discuss the medications being prescribed, instructions on how to take and apply, prepare the patient regarding the possible side effects, talk about cleansing, sunscreens, and moisturizer use, and maybe talk about the sequelae and what procedure might help them in the future, and maybe even send a video of that if required. To improve adherence, physicians must develop these skills to counsel both adults and adolescents. And treatment of acne can change the life of an individual, so ongoing care is essential. Embrace the change and change lives. Hashtags. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rajat, for such an informative lecture, taking us through a teledermatology consult and telling us all the pitfalls. We now come to the next speaker, Dr. Shehnaz Arsiwala.
Hi, everybody.
Dr. Shehnaz, I just introduced you in a second. Although everyone knows you, more than 20 years of experience, areas of expertise, lasers, chemical peels, fillers, editor-in-chief, Journal of Cutaneous and Aesthetic Surgery, awarded 50 Outstanding Women in Health and Wellness in Asia, Dermatologist Award by Giants Group, awarded Top Mumbai Docs 18, 19, 20 by India Today and 2019 by Outlook Magazine. And one thing I want to say is both Shehnaz and I share the same concept that to be a good aesthetic dermatologist, you have to be a good clinical dermatologist. Shehnaz, to you.
Dot on. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. At the outset, I would like to thank Janssen for inviting me for this session. And I'm glad to be amongst experts from the globe. And my topic for today is procedural work in acne. I'll share my screen. Okay. Is my screen visible? Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Your screen is visible, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. So my topic for today is acne procedural management in today's practice. So inflammatory acne is a challenge to treat in a short time frame, and we know that the persistent inflammatory acne lesions predispose to scarring and affect the quality of life of our patient. And medical therapies for inflammatory acne constitutes topical, oral, and hormonal modes. And active acne should be always treated with Global Alliance protocol for acne therapy. But we face partial remission, incompliance, recurrence, sequelae, adverse effects of medical therapies, and increase the demand for safe and fast therapies. So we tend to intervene, and these interventions are taken sometimes while there is active acne, comedone extraction, cystic lesions, or for residual acne clearance, or post-acne sequelae when there are edema and macules, or scarring at any stage with each intervention, or if there is associated seborrhea or desire to have a better texture and a glow. So stages at which interventions are applied is under various circumstances during active acne treatment, residual lesions, and there's pigmentation, and patients have a short deadline, and they are completely treated cases with mild reactivation. The procedures that we used to conduct for acne pre-COVID era were comedone extractions, intralesional steroid therapy for cystic acne, peels, lasers. In these, we used to conduct the non-ablative, the gold toning laser, the Cosy Pulse Mode QS laser, the carbon enhanced laser toning. And we used to use a plethora of procedures, invasive or minimally invasive, for acne scars, along with regenerative therapies and the platelet rich plasma. So selection of the patients for procedures now becomes a critical call. So what does a physician do? So the physician accepts the new normal as our patients who already started to accept this new normal. So we have to weigh the need versus the demand. There are so many patients who are recovered and they want to carry on their life and they want to pay attention to themselves and they want to, they request for these procedures because for them, COVID is probably not a risk anymore, even though we know that the immunity lasts for a short time. And then there is this work from home culture where there's more attention to see yourself and more time to look at yourself, and probably you want to solve the long standing acne problem which you didn't have time for when you were going to work. There are more virtual communications between people, so there are these Zoom meetings, and you want to look good on a virtual platform. These platforms may be business or personal, and when the physician deems it's essential to patient's case when indicated. And when, of course, with the lockdown, no sunlight for 190 days, and all those who are little compliant patients using their sunscreen at home, we are already getting well primed sun protected patients some benefits of lockdown at least. And also some of the patients are really adhering to home regimens better than before. And now, since there's a stage 5 unlock going on in India, especially Maharashtra, my state, and my city, Mumbai, patients are planning their small ceremonies and functions, and so there's a short deadline as unlock and pending events are getting planned. So there are certain recommendations which are made by a set of experts from India who came out with this article in the Journal of Cutaneous and Aesthetic Surgeries, and this publication was in September 2020, where we were in stage 3 of the unlock. So what are the change in the procedure pattern? So you identify the patients for the procedure. So you have to do a risk assessment. You have to have space appointments, which I think Dr. Gold has already covered. You have to pay attention to your room hygiene, pay attention to your device hygiene, and of course, the kind of gear you're going to wear during the procedure. So what are the considerations? So ideally, there is a risk stratification for these. So procedures which are of short duration performed on non-facial areas are considered as low risk and requires donning of a surgical mask. Procedures which are minimally invasive, involve bleeding, short duration procedures on the face, injectables, peels, or aerosol generating procedures on non-facial areas are considered as moderate risk. And these procedures need an apron with a head cover, with an N95 mask, a face shield, double gloves, smoke evacuator with high efficiency particulate drainage. And prolonged surgeries on the head or intraoral or nasal procedures are considered as high risk. These procedures must be carried out with a full body cover with surgical gown, head cover, N95 mask, face shield, double gloves, and smoke evacuator. The physician should be aware of the local epidemiological situation and adhere to the relevant guidelines issued by the relevant government agencies here. So these procedures can be performed safely using the following precautions. So patients who are symptomatic or who are COVID-19 positive should not undergo, if they at all present and you suspect or who are symptomatic, they should not undergo any aesthetic procedure, and these procedures need to be postponed. Patients who have recently recovered from the COVID-19 infection can undergo any procedure as they like to have developed antibodies and are expected to be of no risk to the other patients or clinician and staff after a particular period protocol for quarantine is over. However, in cases reinfection has been described in COVID-19 and hence appropriate PPE needs to be used both for the patient protocol and the physician and the staff protocol. In view of asymptomatic cases, universal precautions are recommended, and that is our new normal. So choosing a patient for the aesthetic procedure, there are 4 key factors that need to be addressed to conduct minimally invasive procedures in the COVID era. These are as follows. 1, choosing a rule regarding proximity of the patient with the physician, and rule regarding conducting the procedure, and by use of full body cover by physician for any procedure, especially the aerosol generating procedure, and full body cover for the assistant in the procedure room is also mandatory. So this is a universal precaution which you can follow with a proper face shield and an N95 mask and complete coverage from head to toe. Then you have to consider the contact of the device to the patient. Here all the protocol regarding disinfection of the movable or immovable device in the room has to be undertaken. Third is the room, chair or bed of the procedure has to be sanitized in between the procedure. And in this situation, for those setups or centers who have a vast space or multiple procedure rooms, will be an added advantage here as it saves time and space in between the sanitization. And the patients undergoing the procedure, that is a proximity rules with a full body cover and rules for the device, room sterility in between the procedures are achieved, and the patient factor is crucial at discretion of the physician and patient with proper consent to conduct the procedures. So that is a patient who is going to undergo the procedure. The procedure planned is a chemical peel, and you see, because you need to do the perioral area as well with the peel, you can use a face shield, and of course the treating physician has to be in a full PPE. So what are the risk categories? So chemical peels, derma roller, platelet rich plasma, and microdermabrasion are what we would conduct in our acne or acne scars patients. So the chemical peel comes under the medial risk or moderate risk, whereas the non-facial area comes under the low risk, and spot peels may be preferred here if possible. As far as microneedling, it's again a moderate risk, and the platelet rich plasma is a moderate risk, and the microdermabrasion is a moderate risk. And how do you sanitize or sterilize the instruments? So you can use a list of disinfectants are available from isopropyl alcohol, glutaraldehyde, ethylene dioxide disinfection, UV sterilization, hypochlorite mist, and also largely isopropyl alcohol and hypochlorous acid, as Dr. Michael Gold already highlighted, glutaraldehyde and ETO. And certain, like for example, for chemical peels and all, you can use sterilized cotton buds, and you can use sterilized cotton balls, and the trays and everything should be autoclaved. And these are the universal precautions we anyways follow for the instruments, but they have to be, you have to re-emphasize and lay emphasis on safety for the patients. So list of disinfectants that are approved for the sanitization. So 70% ethyl alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, sodium hypochlorite solution 0.5 to 1% to disinfect the surfaces, hydrogen peroxide, quaternary ammonium compound, citric acid, chlorine dioxide, peroxytic acid, and glutaraldehyde. Out of which also I learned along this pandemic that hydrogen peroxide and chlorine dioxide, the chlorine tablets, they are also disinfectants for dermatophytosis. So another added boon for us, because in our clinic we are seeing also a lot of pandemic in India because of dermatophytosis, and we found something to get rid of our surfaces of these fomites in the waiting room. So then you have the hand washing method, which you have to follow the 8 steps. And for laser procedures, we all know airborne contaminants are associated with certain lasers, such as ablative fractional lasers and high peak power ultra short pulse lasers, such as nano and picosecond lasers. Apart from airborne contaminants, one has to take care of the lasers with the cooling contact handpiece. So it should be clarified here that the risk due to aerosol after laser or RF procedures is considerably less than aerosol due to mechanical drilling procedures, such as heat generated by tissue interaction with devices, which is likely to include the virus. Through thorough cleaning of the tip is mandatory in a setting of COVID-19. Microneedle RF devices also cause pinpoint bleeding, so there's a break in the barrier and they can increase the risk to the medical personnel. The precaution is you have to use a shield and a smoke evacuator. You have to sterilize the laser handpieces before and after every use. The laser body can be sterilized with any of the approved disinfectants. Sodium hypochlorite solution should be sprayed on the laser equipment, but protecting the optics. The laser optics can be cleaned with isopropyl alcohol or 70% ethyl alcohol. Patient bed and laser room should be sprayed with sodium hypochlorite solution in between each procedure. And it is best to surgically prepare the area to be treated with proper disinfection. And also to wait for 15 minutes after preparation and clean the area again with water in order to avoid potential burns because you have used alcohol before a laser. So that is how you can conduct a laser procedure, smoke evacuator being must. And there is this entire risk of high risk or moderate risk. So most of the non-ablative procedures carry a moderate risk wherever plume is generated. So carbon enhanced laser toning or ablative or fractional ablative laser are high risk because they are aerosol generating. And the light or light based devices carry a low risk, and the energy based devices like RF or HIFU carry a moderate risk. So key points for safe procedures for acne is regard for general precautions in all cases, assess the need of the procedure, fitness of the patient to undergo the procedure, risk to the dermatologist, paramedical staff, and subsequent patients, and how soon the procedure needs to be performed. And the patient needs to be screened and assessed on the urgency of the procedure and then classified into low risk and high risk categories. So the disclaimer is that this recommendation are based on the best available evidence at this time and are subject to change. And it is important to understand that even with following all the aforementioned, the risk of contracting or transmitting the COVID cannot be quantified to zero. Doctors are advised to make their own best judgment with respect to their procedures and their patients. These are some of the procedures that I have conducted during the lockdown. We were shut till April. We started off in April. For 2 months, we did only consultations. And from June and July, we started getting our procedures in. Of course, they are low grade than before, not as high and fast as before, but with due precautions, you can, accept and embrace the new normal, maintaining safety for yourself first, for your staff next, and for your patients, and achieving gratifying outcomes. So with this note, I stop sharing my screen, and thank you so much for a patient hearing.
Thank you, Dr. Shehnaz, for such a great lecture, giving us the insights on how to prepare a clinic and what sort of procedures are mild, moderate, and severe. And there are a lot of questions which have come up even for procedures. We'll take it in the panel discussion. We have about half an hour for the panel discussion. We have a lot of questions from the audience. Many of them are not related to COVID, but I think we can still take those questions for them. So, Asma, can you share my screen also? Yeah. So we'll quickly go to the panel discussion. And I'm going to go back and forth depending on the questions I get. So I want to ask all of you all this question, that if a dermatologist is starting procedures in the clinic, what is a procedure which he should not look into it at all in this COVID time? What would you say let him not address? Anyone can take it. Dr. Shehnaz?
Yeah, I think if you are talking of acne and acne scars, you shouldn't be looking.
We are talking about only acne and acne.
Yeah. So I think you should be cautious, or you should not look into one PRP, because you are dealing with autologous serum and you don't know whether it is convalescent or non-convalescent, and your staff is going to handle the thing. So that I would put that as highest risk, platelet-rich plasma. Second, I would put all ablative lasers. So fractional carbon dioxide and microneedle RF. Top of the list, where you have to be extra cautious. But otherwise, I would, conduct all the moderate and low risk procedures easily.
We have Dr. Michael Gold with us for the panel discussion. It's great. Dr. Gold, what is your input? Are there any procedures you would not do during the COVID time on acne patients?
So at the beginning, when we reopened, we did nothing ablative. We limited to things that really were minimally invasive to the most minimally invasive. After 3 months now, we're doing everything. There's nothing we're not doing. We know how to take care of ourselves, and we know how to take care of the safety of our staff and patients. So we're back to doing fractional CO2, microneedling with needles. We're doing everything again. But again, everything is done with extreme caution and protection. But we're back to doing everything, because we know our patients have, those that are working from home, there's still a lot working from home, so they have the time for the downtime. So we're doing everything.
Okay, thank you. Any input from the other panelists? What procedures are you all doing and not doing?
I agree with Dr. Gold. I don't think we have the luxury that we thought we had in the beginning, that this is going to be a few months or a few weeks and it's going to go away. People still are going for jobs, interviews. People are still getting married. They want clear skin. It is marriage season here in India. All the dates are falling. So we just can't postpone even aesthetic procedures, acne scar related procedures, even ablative procedures anymore. This could go on for another year or two. We can't simply do it. So I agree with Dr. Gold. Even I have started doing whatever little ablative work that I do. I've started it.
Ma'am,
I just add something to this? Please,
I think I completely agree with what you said, because at the end of the day, respiratory aerosol versus tissue aerosol, we don't know how much tissue aerosol is actually even generated. We don't have any experience regarding this. Neither do we have any clear data. So we should, what precaution we are taking with one procedure, we have to take with more or less all. Yes, there are certain high risk procedures which we are going to do with utmost precaution. But I think we need to move ahead.
So for the listeners, a young dermatologist, how important it is to have good ventilation and a smoke evacuator when they are doing any aerosol channels?
Yeah, it's extremely important that the room should be like well ventilated, and the smoke evacuator for procedures where there is aerosol generation is a must.
The one
And what
caveat
about-
one caveat to that,
Yes.
we actually use 2 smoke evacuators on our ablative CO2s now. Just because. No reason, just because.
To be extra cautious.
Mhm.
Right. So there's one question. How would you manage a case of acne, a mask acne, in a pregnant patient in the 3rd trimester? Anurag, you'd like to take that?
Well, a mask acne 3rd trimester, you do a regular treatment which you do for a non-mask acne. There's nothing special which you would do. You would, of course, look at the severity of the condition and assess the disturbance which the patient is having. And according to the severity, like I said, there's no difference in treating any kind of an acne during the COVID and a non-COVID patient. So I would just treat the patient with the usual medications which I am using. I would not give any kind of a special, except that I would request the patient to, if it's confirmed that it's because of mask acne, then like Abir said, that take off the mask, hydrate, moisturize. That would be a more of a preventive treatment, and wash the face properly, clean the mask, do not wear very tight masks. So more would be towards prevention. Treatment would remain the same.
Dr. Goel, would you use a hypochlorous acid on a pregnant 3rd
Absolutely.
trimester?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's no reason not to. And so again, everything what we just heard is what I do. I would treat the patient like I normally would with very little in the 3rd trimester, but whatever is needed. But hypochlorous acid is something that I probably would incorporate into it. You know, there are other things you can do at home. There are blue light therapies that you can do at home, and there's cleansing you can do at home. So I would incorporate all that just as we normally would do.
Thank you. Anyone else with any input? Anyone would like? Okay, so there's an interesting question here from the audience, Dr. Kamlesh. Does any acne drug increase cytokine storm? Anyone has any answer to that?
Not that we know
Not
of.
that we know of. Actually speaking, all the drugs which are used for treating COVID are the ones that are used in acne. You talk about azithromycin, you talk about doxycycline, and even we use sometimes ivermectin for perioral. So all those drugs are actually useful for treating COVID rather than possibly increasing.
Preventing the storm, not causing it.
Yeah, not causing it. So we don't know actually the answer to that. But then these are things which come to the mind immediately on listening to the question.
Dr. Gold, any input?
No, I think just what we heard is correct.
Okay. So there's a question specifically for Dr. Gold. What is the use of instruction for the hypochlorous acid for the patients, and any precautions they need to take?
So no precautions. Again, we have it as a spray. It actually comes in many forms. There's a gel, there's a liquid, and a spray. And I only use the spray in my clinic for my patients. And basically, you just take it, and again, I spray it on my face. I take my mask off and I spray it on my face. It can get in your eyes, as I said. It's no harm. It can get in your mouth. There's no harm. I spray my mask inside and out several times during the course of the day, many times during the course of the day. And when we give it to our patients for the indications that I said, any inflammatory and even acne, they can use it as often as they want. There is no, you have to use it twice a day or once a day. I think that the original studies that are all done, we have, twice a day application or 3 times a day application. But in reality, you can use it as many times as you feel comfortable, and you can recommend to your patients that they can use it as much as they'd like. And I use it in the real world. I use it in combination with other things. So I will prescribe medicines, but I also will use hypochlorous acid. And when I'm doing injectables or laser procedures, we keep a spray on the tray. And during the course of the procedure, my staff will spray the patient, just again to clean and kill the bacteria and anything else on the skin. So we do that a lot, and that's become pretty standard.
So the hypochlorous acid would be a complementary treatment to the actual acne treatment.
Anything you want, yeah.
Okay. Somebody wants, Dr. Rajneesh Kumar wants to know, what are the newer advances in acne treatment?
From my world, the newest treatments are using energy-based devices. So I mean, I think one of the things you see in the U.S. is that we do have new medicines that have recently received FDA approval. So we have forgetting the strength, I want to say it's a 3% topical minocycline foam. It's the first minocycline topical FDA approved. We have our first anti-sebum drug, which is FDA approved topically. That will be launched in about 4 months, but it's FDA approved now. So we have a couple new topicals. I'm working with one of the pharmaceutical companies on a triple combination acne drug. So a retinoid, an antibiotic, and a benzoyl peroxide all together. And that's really hard to get stable. So one of the big pharma companies in acne here has put that together. Phase 2 trials were amazing. The phase 3 is finishing. So maybe in a year or so, we'll have that on the market as well. So we do have, and we actually have a new antibiotic called sarecycline in the last couple of years, which is a completely new tetracycline class. Much easier on the GI tract, much easier. There's no dizziness, photosensitivity. And so that's FDA approved for acne. It's the only FDA approved acne drug, systemic. It's the first time a drug has gotten an FDA approval. Everything else has been sort of grandfathered in, tetracyclines, doxycyclines, minocyclines. So we do have new drugs. We have topical dapsone in a 7.5% in the last couple of years. So we have good drugs, but we also have new, we have devices. So we have a short pulse 1064 ND-YAG, which works amazingly well. It's contactless, it's painless. So in the COVID world, it's become a big player. It's about a 10-minute treatment to cover a whole face. I do it every other week. It really makes acne get better faster without any downtime. There's a new 589 1319 laser, which works great for acne and acne scars. And then obviously we have lots of IPLs and pulse dye lasers that work really well for acne. So devices play a role. And that's what I do for my acne patients, even in COVID.
And I think you'll also have the PDL.
Yeah, so IPL, PDL works great for acne. And again, photodynamic therapy, if you have really bad acne with a photosensitizer, still works really well. So there's a lot of great things out there.
I think we are along.
Nina, there are a couple of more things which are there. Like, I would just like to add here, like trifarotene is a new topical retinoid which is coming in. There are topical anti-androgens which a lot of people are working on and which are showing a lot of promise. And there are certain insulin-like growth factor receptor blockers, which are all in the pipeline, and research has gone really well into it. And so we're really hopeful of getting certain newer molecules. Even peroxisome proliferator inhibitors are known to be in the market maybe a little later in the day. So a lot of things to look forward to, apart from what Dr. Gold has already told about.
Great. Okay. Asma, can you change my slide, please? No, next one. Next. This has all been covered. Next. Okay. Next. Stop. Stop. No, you're not supposed to go to the next. Okay. So, Rajat, you told us something very important in your teleconsults, and we are going to have teleconsults which are going to go on and on. It's not going to stop in spite of the opening up because, like you said, patients are still scared to come. So, can you tell us how do you educate your patient in taking a good clinical photograph? Because you showed us that in certain photographs you can't make out anything.
Ma'am, I think so before the patient, it's important that one educates oneself, because I think taking good images is an art, and I think you sort of learn with time. But what I simply tell them is at least to have there's a grid in many cameras. In the phone cameras, I tell them that the center line should fall at the ala of the nose as well as the tragus. That sort of gets the head tilt fine. Not to use just a portrait mode, use a proper mode in good lighting, ideally daylight, not take it in the night, and obviously not very close images. And I tell them not to take the pictures on their own. I tell them try preferably that someone else takes it for you, because then it becomes out of focus or shaky if you're taking it on your own. And obviously no makeup if possible as well.
Okay. And this is to all the panelists, that what is the time slot you think which is suitable for a teleconsult? Each of us can tell me how much time do you allocate which you think is suitable and justifiable for a teleconsult?
I think 15 minutes is a good time frame. And normally I do a teleconsult only during daylight hours. Try to avoid any teleconsultations after 6 p.m. because, at the opposite end, don't know the kind of light that the person would have. We ask the patients to send an email request. This is followed by photographs from the patient. If the photographs are not appropriate for viewing, we decline. And only when we get good quality photographs, we accept the teleconsultation, and then we conduct them in good lighting. And we send a disclaimer to the patient, which the patient has to accept in writing or sign it, and then we accept it.
Okay. Dr. Rajat, time slot?
Ma'am, same. I follow the exact same as ma'am. I follow
15 minutes.
Slot, yeah.
Okay. Anurag?
Well, honestly speaking, teleconsultation for me is a tougher job than seeing the patient upfront.
I think we all agree.
I would wholeheartedly have, I would rather do a personal consultation, and I don't keep my patients to a particular slot, because if the patient is on a follow-up, I can sort of look in up quickly. So I tend to keep it, let's say, from 6:30 to 7:30 once I finish my clinic, either in the afternoon or daytime, and depend on the consultations we have. We start from one end and finish it off to the other, whatever time it takes. So I don't go by particular time to a particular patient. So I keep it very, very open and flexible. I keep it very flexible. Appointments are there. But we call up the patient, we give them a slot that, okay, fine, the doctor will consult you between 1 to 2 p.m. So you be there. That is the kind of a thing which, and of course, the precautions which Shehnaz has already told about.
Abir?
I schedule about 3 times the amount of time that I would for a face-to-face consultation. So yeah, about 15 minutes. And I do give appointments. I have dedicated slots, and I give 1/3 the number of appointments that I would give in the same duration for face-to-face consultations. So that's broadly how I do it. Another important thing for photographs that I think was not mentioned is to switch off the beauty filters that are built into almost every cell phone camera, more so into front cameras, but they're built into back end cameras as well, especially the Chinese mobiles, and they just flatten out, plane out all blemishes, including all comedones, acne, etc. on your face. So they have to be switched off. I have to tell many patients specifically to retake the photographs because their beauty filters are not switched off.
Dr. Gold, any tips?
Yeah, I'll tell you how we do it. So We work, and I'll tell the name of the company. So we work with a company called Doxy.me. It is a platform, telemedicine platform that my whole office is involved with. So if a patient wants an appointment, a telemedicine appointment, there's a screening. They get on with my front office. They get all the insurance information. They get all the payment information. Then they go on to a screen with my nurses who do the intake and ask all the questions and update their medicines and everything that they have to do. And then they're told that the provider will be with you shortly. I'm sort of told there's a telemedicine consult or visit. I get onto I'm on my computer all day anyway, seeing patients. So I have another screen that is called Doxy.me, and I get on and it tells me that, whoever's in my waiting room, I click on that. They get onto their webcam. It's all done through webcam. There are no photos taken. It's a live one-on-one webcam thing. It is very high resolution, and we have a conversation, and that conversation can last from a minute to 4 minutes, 3 minutes, because I have all the information I need in my EMR, my medical record. So I already know what the patient's asking. I already know what the medicines are, especially for acne and so forth. And the reality is, as everybody said, I'm much happier saying, yes, you have acne. I'll give you something simple topically if they're whatever, and then I need you in my office now. So during the lockdowns, we had to do everything over the phones or the computer. And now I'm much, I do 1 or 2 of these a day now. And the reality is I tell everybody, if you haven't been here in a year, or you haven't been here in 3 months or 6 months, and you're not getting better, or you're a new patient, you better come to the office. And I explain how safety is and all that. So I don't spend very much time on telemedicine. Even when I'm on telemedicine, I do it quickly. And then I just I go back to my medical records. I make a note. There's a telemedicine thing that I click on in my medical records, which then documents the telemedicine, so I actually can get paid by insurance companies for that part of it.
Oh, I wish we could do the same.
It's easy
The
here.
problem-
Yeah, it's easy here. I mean, we've made that these platforms have made it easy because, again, it ties into my clinic, and it ties into it's a secure site and everything else that I need in order to do that.
I think in India,
Similar platform which is directly integrated with my EMR, but we have unique India-specific problems with the incredibly poor network outside big cities.
Exactly.
Video consult often is a complete waste of time. And although I can talk to the patient and I can vaguely see their face, I have to ask for photographs again, or they've already uploaded it into the integrated system, and I'm able to see those photographs in advance. But it's a lot of back and forth between video, audio, photographs, conversations, repeat clarifications on chat. So roughly about 3 to 4 times the amount of time than to a face-to-face consultation.
And it's almost impossible to say, this is a benign nevus, or this is a melanoma, or this is a basal cell carcinoma. I need that person in the office. So yeah, you got a spot. Yeah, I'll see you next week or next month. And if I think it's bad, I'll see you tomorrow.
I think we all are getting fed up of teleconsult.
Also, Neena, what happened is the acne and pigmentation patients in the earlier phase of the pandemic sat at home and they never wanted to do anything about it. So the people who came online were bullous pemphigoid, cellulitis, acute urticaria. Those are the patients who desperately wanted a teleconsultation, which within the law of the land, you need to see them.
I find that in this lockdown, I find more of the acne patients having dysmorphic pattern, because even if when there's one acne, they are so upset about it. So I have to tell them, stop looking at yourself so often. You have too much time to examine yourself. So I'm finding it's the opposite. The acne patients, the mild ones, are coming as though it's the end of the world. And you get a SMS in the middle of the night showing one zit on the face. In India, they have access to us at any time, which is so frustrating. Anyway, Go to the next slide, please, Asma. Okay, Marsne, I think we've covered up everything about Marsne very nicely. Next slide. So we always talk about moisturizing in acne, and I had a lot of the crowd asking me that what sort of moisturizers do you recommend for an acne patient? So we always go down to the basics of barrier function repair and types of moisturizers. So anyone, when a patient tells you what sort of moisturizer, doctor, what moisturizer should I use? Just quickly, what do you advise?
So I use basically emollient-based moisturizers. Also, if I'm co-prescribing with a retinoid, and if it's an extremely oily skin, then I would use a gel-based, and I would also use one of the the wipes jars which are available, which are incorporated with salicylic or glycolic acid in an extremely oily skin, and I would use largely more of emollients.
Okay, anyone else?
Nina, emollients, moisturizers are a Pandora's box, I feel. The moment you write to a patient, the patient will come back and tell you, doctor, the moisturizer you gave me, the sunscreen which you gave me has resulted in acne. So I usually like to flow with what the patient is using. I try to identify what they're comfortable with. And it's not big thing for me to continue with what they are actually using and they are more comfortable with. As long as it is not causing any kind of occlusion, I know it's not a very occlusive kind of a thing. So I'm more comfortable with what the patient is using and applying, actually speaking, honestly.
So, but more often than not, patient also ends up asking you, what would you prefer? You tell us what you want us to do.
Yeah. If they are listening, you tell them what you prefer, but ultimately they like to do what they want to do. So
no, but what would you prefer? Anurag,
I would go with what Shahnaz has told. I would, if they were talking to me scientifically, I would go with what Shahnaz is saying.
No, I
would be very, very open.
Answers.
I would be very, very open with what the patient is using. I would not try to actually go out of my way to stop what he or she is using. That is what I wanted to convey.
Actually, the patient may be using something comedogenic. So that's why it's important that we choose it for the patient.
Dr. Abir?
I try to avoid moisturizers that contain too much urea or any urea at all, propylene glycol, fragrances. These are the three main things of concern for facial moisturizers for me. Apart from that, I agree to a large extent with what Dr. Anurag said. I try to find out what the patient is using. If it is innocuous, if it does not contain petrolatum, or they're not rubbing mustard oil or coconut oil on their faces twice a day as part of some weird beauty regimen, I don't interfere with that. If I'm happy with their product, I tell them to stick with it.
Dr. Gold?
Yeah, my world's probably very different. In my acne patients, I'll tell the two brands that I use. I'm sure one is in India. I'm not sure the other one is. Cetaphil and CeraVe are my go-to products, but I also sell them out of my office, which is very different. So I sell tons and tons of Cetaphil and I send tons and tons of CeraVe to my patients. So all my acne patients are on a Cetaphil or CeraVe cleanser, moisturizer when they leave. If they can't afford to buy it, we'll give them some samples. But we actually sell it cheaper than some of the pharmacies and big boxes that sell these things through deals that I've worked out with both of the companies here in the US. So it's more cost effective if they want to buy it in my office. But then I know exactly what they're using, and that works for me, and I've done that for years.
So the next question is, are you going to ask them to use the moisturizer first and then your active ingredient, or first your active cream and then the moisturizer?
So I do the active cream and then the moisturizer.
And what would be the gap between the two?
It can be, depending on what kind of active I'm using on the skin. If it's a gel or a solution, I only wait a few minutes. And if it's a cream, then I tell them to wait about 15 to 30 minutes. But again, I think compliance becomes the biggest problem. If it's I'm going to be sexist for a minute. If it's a woman, I can tell them and they'll do anything I say as far as when to put creams and lotions on. And if it's a guy, if they don't do it all at the same time, they're not doing it. So you got to be careful because the guys don't like, okay, I got to wait 30 minutes. I got to wait an hour. They just won't do it. So compliance wise, you have to go for the guys a little bit different than the ladies out there.
We agree. The guys are bad patients.
Yep.
Abir, what goes first, the moisturizer or the active? We can't hear you. You're muted.
Unmute.
The active always goes first on to clean skin and the moisturizer later.
Anurag?
Agree with Abir. Same thing.
Okay. Rajat, agree.
Ma'am, I many a times do the moisturizer first. If the barrier is particularly impaired and if the patient's on the retinoid, then I do that, and a little while later I'll tell them to apply the retinoid or a benzoyl peroxide. That's what I do usually.
Okay. So would it make a difference, Dr. Gold, if they apply the active ingredient first, or if they apply the moisturizer first and then the active ingredient? Would it make a difference in the therapeutic efficacy?
In my thought process, it will. I'm not sure anybody's ever looked at that. But again, when you think about how we've always done this, if you're using a retinoid, you put the retinoid on first, then you wait and you put your moisturizer on if you need it. So I just think that's the way we should go. But I'm not sure anybody's looked at it in the COVID acne world, whether one makes a difference or not.
Okay. Because these are questions which we are always asked. So next slide. Asma, next. So you can, this is something I looked up. So you could use topical niacinamide. You can use the dermocosmeceuticals with sebastatic agents, alpha lipoic acid, lauric acid. I find, I don't know if any of y'all agree, but when they use a dimethicone containing a moisturizer or a sunscreen, I feel that the irritation with the mask is much less. Anyone agrees or disagrees? Because it gives them a nice slip. So that is something which I have been doing with my patients, using something which has a dimethicone in it. So it gives a nice slip. Next slide. Okay, this was an interesting thing because we use a lot of N95 and they found that the patients also had allergic contact dermatitis, which was due to the formaldehyde which was used during the manufacture of these non-woven polypropylene N95. And they may contribute to an allergic contact dermatitis. So sometimes if you find the patient saying, I think even when we use the mask, sometimes the N95, you feel so itchy under the mask. So that is something worth thinking about. Next slide. Diet we've all covered. Stress we've covered. Yeah. Anyone wants to add?
Yeah, I've seen mask contact dermatitis. I've seen mask contact dermatitis, and I've patch tested one patient. He was positive to a preservative, phenoxyethanol actually. So I don't know whether it was relevant or not. But mask contact dermatitis, I'm seeing quite a lot. Yes.
And I'm sure they can't find. I'm sure they can't find out if that ingredient is in that mask or not. I mean,
no way. They're all
there's no
China,
way. There's no way.
Yeah, it's very tough. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. So everyone is scared to use isotretinoin. I think all you speakers brought it out very, very nicely that isotretinoin, in fact, can be used. And I think Anurag and Abir, you'll also showed that how it benefits. And Anurag, you talked about the enzyme, which is important for COVID. So I think we all agree that isotretinoin is very useful, even in the COVID time. What is the maximum dose one can go during the COVID times? The maximum, because we get a lot of cheilitis. So what is the maximum dose you have used in the COVID time? Okay, I'll put it to that. Rajat?
See the
I have used up to even 40 milligrams, despite there were earlier fears, but I think we weren't seeing anything going wrong and things were going fine. So I have used in certain patients where I was struggling.
Okay.
So
Anurag?
I use 1 milligram per kilogram per day without any issues.
Yeah.
During the COVID time also.
Yes.
Okay, so the take-home message is that isotretinoin is very safe during the COVID time, and you can updose as much as you think is required and relevant for the patient. Next slide. Okay, so this was a nice study where I think, Abir, you talked about this, that we always worried that isotretinoin dried up the nasal mucosa, but they found that it didn't actually do that, and you could use your nasal moisturizers like Vaseline, hypertonic saline. So this was a systemic isotretinoin therapy in the era of COVID-19. Next slide. Next. And this was very important. So one of the earliest clues of COVID is loss of smell, sense of smell and taste. And in this study, they found that patients on isotretinoin, actually their olfactory function improved. So it may be interesting that patients who've lost their sense of smell and sense of taste, that maybe we should give them isotretinoin to help them to improve their sense of smell. Because I've come to understand that a lot of people are facing this, and they actually have to be trained to again recognize smells and taste. So you have physiotherapists who are doing that. So it's become a very difficult situation because loss of taste and smell goes on longer than patients are happy with. So this may be something which we can encourage patients if they say we don't want to take isotretinoin. Next slide. Asma, please. Okay, azithromycin. Dr. Gold, do you all use azithromycin in, forget COVID, but do you all use it in the therapy of acne, azithromycin?
Very, very little.
And what is the reason?
I'm a doxycycline, minocycline, and now this new sarecycline. That's what I use on 99.9% of people. So unless they have a tetracycline allergy, and then I give them sulfa, I give them Bactrim. So that's my next one, and then this is my next one after that.
Okay, Abir?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you use azithromycin?
Absolutely, yes. We use azithromycin. We all in India, I think, we use a lot of azithromycin for our acne patients, and I don't see a problem with COVID. If at all, theoretically, it should help. With the drug as it is, it's being massively prescribed by the authorities for as a general sort of catch-all therapy for COVID as well. So I see no problems in prescribing for our acne patients.
For minimally symptomatic patients, that was a protocol to add azithromycin for 5 days.
Yeah, with very little scientific basis, I might add.
Yes.
I think they used to combine it with hydroxychloroquine, but then they found problems. So I think azithromycin is no longer used for COVID. They've gone on to doxycycline, which is better for the cytokines. Okay, next slide. So is anyone worried about this in India? This was Dr. Kabir Sardana. You all must all be knowing about this study about how resistant the Cutibacterium acne is to the azithromycin. So have you all seen any resistance in the response to acne?
Yes,
the response to acne has very little to do with actual antibacterial activity or the killing of Cutibacterium acnes by the antibiotic. This is very well known, and there is remarkably poor correlation between the amount of killing of the Cutibacterium and versus the improvement in acne in most patients. So I personally think the way in which bacterial resistance studies are done in acne patients right now have very little relevance on the antibiotic use that we do in acne.
It's more
Anyone
like
else with input?
it's
And
more
on that,
inflammation.
and on that note, I think we in India also await a low dose doxycycline to come in amongst the newer things, which was probably missed. And we have a low dose minocycline, but yet we are still using azithromycin left, right, and center. So, I mean, this is always discussed, particularly in Delhi, as you said, Dr. Sardana's paper, that, a lot of resistance to azithromycin, but then are we all using sub-antimicrobial doses of antibiotics for acne? Are we doing that routinely in our practice? I mean, I don't know.
The problem which he concluded in his study was that azithromycin works very effectively in community-acquired pneumonias, and that the resistance could be transferred to other diseases, and then you would not have a drug, effective drug. So that was the reason I brought this up. Next slide, Asma. Okay, this I think Shena's covered up very nicely. Shena, somebody is asking about, now let's take some of the general questions, that how effective are chemical peels in treating inflammatory acne?
Yeah, so once you follow the Global Alliance protocol for improvement of acne, then for residual lesions, you can use an intervention. The chemical peel has many chemical peels available which bring down inflammatory acne, salicylic acid being one of them, then the retinol or the yellow peel being another one, azelaic acid, and you can layer these peels as well in a patient. So definitely they bring down the inflammatory acne. So they have quite a bit of role to play.
Rajat?
I agree, ma'am. I use particularly beta hydroxy acids for inflammatory acne at times. And however, I am not a person, if there's a lot of inflammation on the face, I would try to get it down a bit before resorting to chemical peels.
Abir, there's a one of the questions is that you talked about acne mimickers. So no, Rajat, you spoke on acne mimickers, I think. So somebody has a question that how would you treat perioral acne?
For me?
Anyone. I mean, you can take it. Perioral acne. These are very general questions, not related to the COVID.
Perioral acne, I would treat as any other acne, and maybe the skin on the lower face is sometimes a little more sensitive to retinoid treatment. So I would make sure that the patient is, using maybe a moisturizer at times, particularly if they're facing dryness. But otherwise, I think my treatment would more or less remain the same. Having said that, perioral or lower face acne could be common in an adult female, is maybe a little more resistant to treatment, and if there is a hormonal undercurrent, I would take care of that as well.
Also, you should rule out if the patient is on a fluorinated steroid, so steroid abuse, and also you have to consider mimickers like Demodex or rosacea pattern should be considered, and you can give ivermectin in such patients. It works beautifully.
Ma'am, you're mute.
You're muted.
Yeah.
Next question is that if you are doing procedures during the COVID time for acne, would you do them at the same frequency or would you stagger them?
So once you do one, you do all of them with the same frequency as you did in the pre-COVID era.
So basically, you don't think of the COVID, that we are now in the COVID age, and you treat the patients normally as you would with the precautions which you mentioned.
Yes, absolutely. So universal precautions is a new normal, and the faster we accept it. And most of us have done COVID duties in the initial 2-3 months. So I mean, it's faster for a physician to embrace, and Then eventually your staff embraces the new normal, and then now the patients have started embracing it too.
So would you give the patient also a PPE?
Yes, yes.
For all
So,
the patients, even for a chemical peel?
yes, we do. For now, we do.
Or
So
what
we have
about
a
Sorry.
COVID procedure. We have a COVID procedure consent. So lest you innocently do a chemical peel within standard guidelines, and then the patient should not have a pointer that I walked out of the clinic after doing this procedure and then I have picked up COVID from your center. So there's a COVID consent form, and yes, we use for our patients as well.
So do we.
Dr. Goel, does every patient get a PPE?
So when you say PPE,
It's a protective, personal protective.
Yeah, so I mean, you're not allowed in my clinic without a mask and a temperature check and all that, and a questionnaire filled out and a COVID consent signed. The reality is that we're working on faces. So the patients will have their masks on, when we start everything, and we'll remove the masks as we need it. We're totally covered, and they're not in bodysuits and everything else. I mean, again, we take the precautions that we need to take for our comfort level. That's how we do it.
So the last question for the day is, when you do your procedures, we had read about making them gargle with betadine, or putting betadine into the nares, or somebody had talked about ivermectin. So what is the protocol you all use? Do you all use this when you all are doing procedures like fillers or something very close to the nose and the mouth?
We take a liquid betadine solution and paint it in the rim of the nose. And we don't do betadine gargles, but that is, I think, largely done by dentists. And when you're not working around the O of the face, the patient can remain in mask. For example, when you're doing a botulinum toxin, the patient can, for the forehead or glabellar, the patient can remain in the mask. And post procedures, after we conduct the fractional laser or the MNRF, we see to it that we replace the patient's mask with a fresh new surgical mask.
Okay. Abir? Do you believe in using the betadine?
No, I don't. I don't. I believe in protecting myself and following common sense precautions, changing gloves, washing my face, making sure I am double gloved. I have a mask on as well as a shield, and I think that's enough. If we're doing the proper screening of not allowing febrile patients and the patients wearing masks, but of course it has to be taken off if you're working on the face and nose area. So I don't use that betadine protocol at all.
There's a lot in the United States that use the betadine protocol on every patient that the mask comes off, and a lot of them do it on themselves every day and their staff, and especially when they're getting close to patients. I don't, but I know many people that do.
Ma'am, I mean, betadine, if you're going to do a gargle and there's going to be a spittoon or something, because there's going to be a lot of splatter when the patient's going to spit it out in any case, which is again an aerosol being generated.
Yeah.
So you have to take caution while you're doing it. I don't follow it as well. I think what Dr. B said, taking all other necessary common sense precautions.
Yeah, the gargle is, I think, done only by dentists, but you can apply topically for.
Yes.
But there are a lot of facial plastic surgeons that will swab the nose of every patient before they do fillers and procedures in the face. So it's being done.
Okay. So we've run out of time. I'd like to thank Dr. Goel for spending so much time with us and coming for our panel discussion with great insights. I'd like to thank Dr. Abir Saraswat, Anurag, Rajat, and Sharnaz, who have given such great inputs. And I think the take-home message is that now we all have, if we are well prepared for COVID, there's no fear. We can still do good dermatology. And the therapy of acne remains the same, whether it's the COVID or the non-COVID era. So we all have to support and treat the patients and protect ourselves, as COVID is not going to go. And as Dr. Gold said, COVID is not aware, acne is not aware that there's a pandemic around. So with these words, I hand over to Dr. Sachin.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you everyone. Thank you, Nina ma'am, for excellent moderation for this important scientific session on acne in this changing time. Because of COVID-19 pandemic, everyone is facing problems, and definitely this acne is a troubling problem for patients. Thank you all the participants for taking out their time, and I would like to extend my special thanks to our esteemed panel members, Dr. Michael Gold, Dr. Abir Saraswat, Dr. Anurag Tiwari, Dr. Shehnaz Artiwala, and Dr. Rajat Kandari. Thank you everyone for joining with us. Have a nice Sunday ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Great seeing everybody.
Yes, bye.